Roll, flip it, got it. Oh, the ball was dropped. He had the 2-point conversion in his hands. Andrews did not hold on.
It's just one catch, one play that needs to be made. There are so many other moments in the game, whether it was an opportunity to score a touchdown or just a big conversion, but nothing is as high stakes as this. In the playoffs, trying to get a 2-point conversion just to tie the game and go into overtime and give your team a fighting chance to stay and compete for a Super Bowl. There are so many other opportunities to win the game, but right here is a moment where it is all decided in one play. And so when you don't make that reception, even if you've had a solid game to this point, nothing else matters in that moment because no matter what you did, it wasn't enough. And as an athlete, you're going to remember the one mistake you made as opposed to any highlight reel plays you might have had, any great production you might have had. The mistakes you make stick with you. Welcome back to State of the Association. I'm your host, Nash Roberts, and today we're talking about the psychology of one dropped catch. And in this instance, we're talking about Mark Andrews in his game with the Baltimore Ravens last night against the Bills in a game that would send either team to the AFC Championship and the other home. Entering the game, let's set the scene. Both Buffalo and Baltimore are two of the best teams, if not the two best teams, in the entire AFC. The Kansas City Chiefs stand on top with a 15-2 record, but they had a shaky regular season in terms of their margin of victories. And as a result of that, whether it's fair or not, both the Ravens and Bills feel like they have a good chance to win the entire AFC, if not the Super Bowl. They like their chances against the Chiefs. The Ravens were very close to beating them in week 1, and then the Bills did, ruling the Chiefs' chances out in an undefeated season. So both these teams like their matchups because that Ravens game in particular went down to pretty much the last play. But the problem arises is that these two teams are going to have to play in the second round of the playoffs. The Chiefs, as the 1 seed, they have the right to play against the lowest seed, and that was the number 4 Houston Texans. And that leaves the Ravens and Bills to have to fight it out in the second round of the playoffs when they believe that they are both the best teams in the AFC, and perhaps rightfully so, given the impressive regular seasons that they've had. But one of these teams is going to have to go home early. And they start off both scoring a touchdown on their respective drives. The Bills have looked more dynamic than ever this year, and that is a team that, with the absence of Stephon Diggs, losing him before the season, was expected to kind of have a little bit of a reset. Josh Allen's still great, of course. He would go on having an MVP caliber season, but this team wasn't expected to do as much as they had in years past without a true number 1. But they showed how dynamic they were. Their running back, James Cook, set the tone early, as well as Josh Allen's threat running the ball. And we all know what Baltimore can do. The addition of Derrick Henry ran for 1,900 yards and wasn't the leading rusher in the league. That is insane. And Lamar had his most efficient season passing yet, one of the most efficient passing seasons in NFL history. But one of these teams is going to have to go home early. And they both scored a touchdown on their opening drive. But then after that, it is miscue after miscue for Baltimore. Whether it's a Lamar interception or a Lamar fumble, it's a very uncharacteristic start for number 8, who has been super safe with the ball all year, and his first game of the season with multiple turnovers. But credit to the Ravens, their defense stood tall as much as they could in that situation where they were being put in really bad positions. That fumble got to about the 20. And while the Bills do manage to gain a lead over Baltimore, they really don't execute as much as they perhaps could have in terms of really shutting this game down early. Because the game is still in reach for the Ravens in spite of these costly turnovers and mistakes made in the early portion of a playoff game. And as the game goes on, the Ravens begin to climb back, and they realize that this lead that the Bills have created is still one that they can fight back from. And that's precisely what they do. Derrick Henry this year, he's been super impressive in the first half, but even better in the second half of games. So as a playoff game especially goes on, with the physical nature of it, Derrick Henry is a guy who can go out there and continuously get better as other guys get more tired. And in the last couple of minutes of the game, the Baltimore Ravens score a touchdown. And all of a sudden, it is a 2-point game. And they, of course, go for two to send this game to overtime. And Lamar Jackson throws the ball to number 89, Mark Andrews. At the tight end position, he's truly a safety net. Lamar loves Andrews. And up to this point, it's been a little bit of a down year for him because he was dealing with some injury issues to start off the year. And as the season really started, he was getting a little bit less of a snap count and really sharing that with fellow tight end Isaiah Likely. But as the year went on, he got into more of a groove, and both him and Likely showed that they could thrive playing together. And as a quarterback, Lamar has always loved Mark Andrews, especially in that end zone. That's his safety blanket. And so, like so many times before, like they've executed in practice so many times, and in real live games so many times, he throws it to Mark Andrews once again. But this time, the ball was dropped. The 2-point conversion tied the game, going to perhaps your safest receiving option over the years. A guy who's had impressive season after impressive season and is in the upper echelon of tight ends in the entire league. Has consistently finished as a top 10 one, bordering on that top 5 for many seasons now. And he drops the ball in the most critical moment of the game, in the play that everyone's going to remember, that's going to truly kind of decide the outcome, because if the Ravens don't get this, they're out of the game and they're out of the playoffs. And that's exactly what happens. The Bills run out the clock and the Ravens are going home. And if you're Mark Andrews, you have to feel terrible about it. This is a play that, in a game between two stars, two MVP candidates, the two most likely MVP winners in Lamar and Josh Allen, all anyone's talking about now is your drop. And you're aware of that drop. As I mentioned in the introduction, as an athlete, I've played in sports in the past. When you make a mistake, you're going to remember that every time over all the successful stuff you did, especially if it cost your team the game. And especially given the adversity that Mark Andrews has had to face this year, coming back from that injury and that crash, sharing snaps with Isaiah Likely, kind of questioning what your role on this offense is. And then in the biggest game of the season so far, you drop the pass that truly might have decided the game, because even if the Ravens, of course, if the Ravens didn't get it, the game was over. But if they had gotten it, that swings some momentum in their favor. They've been coming back all game. And so if it went to overtime, there's a very good chance they could have pulled it out. But we'll never get to know. And if you're Andrews, that really weighs on you after all the adversity of the season, after coming back and having a great second half. But it all comes down to one play, and that one play is not just all that everyone around you is going to remember, especially in the media, but one that you're going to remember for the rest of your life. And so with that, I want to spin this into a positive fashion, because so much of media nowadays is so critical, so negative. And this has been an analysis, sure, but I've tried to lean into more of the psychological aspect of it, how it really weighs on him, and how we could kind of be sympathetic for Andrews given the situation and kind of understand the context and the scene setting around it. That's my brand over here on State of the Association. And does it pull in a big audience right now? No. But we're trying to promote positivity in the sports media sphere. And in doing so, let's give this a positive takeaway. Something that you're not going to see from pretty much any major media outlet when it comes to covering the Ravens and Andrews after this game. And that is that it has been a heck of a year for the Baltimore Ravens, and one that has shown that they are one of the tougher, grittier teams in the entire league. They've dealt with ever-evolving changes over the years with their roster and just really the circumstances that guys are playing in. Lamar has evolved and become the best version of a quarterback that he has ever been. I mentioned the adversity between Andrews having to share snaps with Isaiah Likely, but Likely himself has emerged as a very good tight end, and that's an elite tight end duo relative to the skill and really production of both guys there. And then adding in Derrick Henry for a run-oriented team already just takes your team to the next level, and having a great run game in a modern NFL that's all about passing can open up that passing game even more. I think this was the best Ravens team in the Lamar Jackson era that we've ever seen. And it didn't end as some other seasons have in an AFC Championship loss. But if they were playing any other team in the AFC, I think they would have had a very good chance to win. Because if it was the Houston Texans, they've had a little bit of a sophomore slump in terms of head coach D'Amico Ryans and even quarterback CJ Stroud. And for the Chiefs, they lost to the Chiefs in week 1, but this team has evolved so much since then. Lamar looked really inaccurate week 1, but he's turned that around so much and had the best quarterback year of his career through the air. I think they could have beat any other team in the AFC aside from the Buffalo Bills, and they were very close to beating Buffalo. It just came down to one play. So this was the best Ravens team under Lamar that we have ever seen, and they deserve all the flowers in the world for that. Did it end in the ultimate goal of the Super Bowl? No. But if a couple other things went their way, especially this 2-point conversion, we could absolutely be talking about them as Super Bowl champions. And for Mark Andrews, it has been a tough, tough season, but he is consistently a top 10 tight end in the NFL. And there were some major doubters after the first 5 weeks, but in the back half of the year, he really turned things around and proved and really solidified himself as still being that guy. But one play is all that's going to be remembered, and that absolutely is going to weigh on him. But that means he's going to have a chip on his shoulder going into next year. This whole team is, because they acknowledge as well, they know that this is the best they've played under Lamar, under number 8. And it's going to weigh on them and put a chip on their shoulder because at the end of the day, the ultimate goal, all you want is to win that Super Bowl trophy. And this team is going to come back next year hungrier than ever. And there's going to be question marks for sure. You look at a guy like Derrick Henry, he's only getting older, right? And with modern running backs, typically they don't last as long as even Derrick Henry has to this point. But he just had one of the best seasons of his career, perhaps the best relative to the expectations of him, maybe declining a little bit just due to age. Obviously, we acknowledge he was great going into the year, but I didn't expect him to be a near 2,000-yard rusher and almost being the first player in NFL history to have multiple 2,000-yard rushing seasons. This is a very good team, and it came down to the wire to the nearly the last play of the game that would have sent it to overtime. Came down to really the last meaningful play of the game. And all anyone's going to talk about is this drop. But if you're the Baltimore Ravens, there are plenty of positive takeaways from the season. And for Mark Andrews, it's been a year of so much adversity, and it's really going to be exemplified by this play. That's all anyone's going to talk about. But you have to be able to compartmentalize it and use it as motivation, become the best version of yourself. I think this team has all the determination to do just that. So while this play was terrible, while it was one bad play that would end the Ravens season and knock them out of the playoffs entirely, and a ball that Mark Andrews absolutely should have caught, sometimes it is important to take a step back and just appreciate a team for what they are in the face of everyone criticizing them, and acknowledge what a great run it was for Baltimore, how exciting they were at times, and be thankful that as a medium of entertainment, football is the largest in America and one of the largest in the entire world, really, just given how many Americans watch it, that we get to be entertained on a weekly basis by a team like the Ravens, led by a stud at quarterback, perhaps the best dual threat of all time. It's him and Michael Vick, and then it's everybody else quite behind. And then for the Bills, we're grateful to watch them week in, week out too, especially all the expectations for them going into the year with the loss of Stephon Diggs and evolving and becoming an even better team. We're grateful to have two teams like these to watch week in, week out for a sport that is entertainment at the end of the day. So in spite of this loss, in spite of this terrible, terrible drop and one bad play, it has been a heck of a year for the Baltimore Ravens, and one that they're going to be hungrier than ever going into the next because of the end result for this one. And that is all for today's episode of State of the Association. I'm your host, Nash Roberts. Thank you for listening. Now, if you're watching on Spotify, I've got about 2 total listeners on Spotify, or YouTube especially. This is kind of what I'm trying to set my brand as someone who kind of spins into sports media more positively, because so often that is lost, as I've talked about here. And so, if you've enjoyed this, feel free to subscribe. Of course, it helps the algorithm as well as liking and stuff. If this was enjoyable, because at the end of the day, it's not worth it. If it's not, but we're trying to get better each time. And if you're on Spotify, feel free to follow the podcast. This is really one of my favorite works yet because it represents what I want to do in kind of spinning things more positively, giving people their flowers when so often people are going to focus on so many negative things and just feeding into negativity that can really affect just so many aspects of your life and exemplify all the negative things that are really only gonna make you more self-critical and have a more pessimistic outlook on things. And of course, there are going to be times when anyone's feeling down, regardless of that. But by putting yourself in situations where you can think more positively and thinking more critically, more logically, more reasonably, and being more appreciative of things, you can really set yourself up to enjoy life and enjoy the entertainment in football. And as I like to focus on as well, basketball, you get to enjoy that more when you're thinking positively. So that's really what I try to focus on. And once again, if that's something you enjoy, if you've made it this far, thank you so much. And I would appreciate a subscription or a follow or a like or a comment or whatever it might be. Whatever you find this deserving of. And I know it wasn't perfect, but I'm 17 years old right now. By the time I'm out of college, I'm gonna have had 6 years of doing this, and so we're trying to get better each day and try to make positive impact in the sports media sphere. When so often everything is so negative, and thinking of just the worst. When there's so much more to it than that, such a more positive outlook you can take, and just giving people their flowers. Thank you for listening. This has been State of the Association. I'm your host, Nash Roberts. This game ended in one bad play, but it was a great game and a great season for the Baltimore Ravens in spite of all of that. Thank you.